What's the work moment that felt like you hit the lottery? About an hour into delivering this morning, I get to what I expect will be a regular signature required stop. After ringing the doorbell and knocking, a solid minute passes with nothing happening. Now, this is frustrating because my shift is up when my truck is empty, so every second counts. Also, I had a really good momentum going, but I wait because the package is some alcohol, so I can't leave it on the doorstep. So the door finally opens, and this 23-year-old is standing there in a low-cut tank top and no pants, cute as a button, obviously just woke up and decided to answer the door in her garments. I ask for ID, she says it's in the car, and goes to get a skirt on. The skirt is very tight and short, and I follow her to her car, staring at her back the whole time. Transaction completed, blah blah blah, hot girl goes inside, and the whole rest of my day is a little better than most days. Story 12. Not me, but my old roommate. It was his first day delivering pizzas, and he got to a house where the total was almost exactly $20. A girl answered the door and then realized she had no extra money, so she walked back inside to ask her friends if they had extra for the tip, apparently, so she wouldn't stiff him, and she walked back out empty-handed. With her, however, her two lady friends supposedly came with her, and they asked him if their melons would do for a tip. Without waiting for a reply, they all three flashed him at once and closed the door. This is all according to him, but he sounded so dumbfounded while telling the story, I actually believe him. At any rate, I wish that would happen to me. Story 3. I was working at my mom's restaurant back when I was 21 as a waiter. One night, I get this family that comes in that's really friendly. They were my only table as it was near closing time, so I had plenty of time to give them some extra attention and to make friends. One of the family, the daughter obviously, was about 19 and was absolutely gorgeous. Anyways, after they got done eating and bullcrapping for a while, the place was closing up. One of the girls' aunt says to me, "Why don't you come over and join us for some drinks after you're done cleaning up?" I decided to take her up on the offer. What happened from there was basically a long night of drinking and her family basically shoving the daughter towards me, sort of a go-get-'em girl type of situation. Me and her went back to my place that night and had quite a good time. We ended up dating for about 6 months. Was a pretty good time all around. Story 4. I work in an office and it can be boring sometimes. Recently, Eric from Transworld, and this is a recorded line, started calling looking for my boss. When I tell Eric that my boss is not in, he insists on giving him my boss's cell phone number. I don't, so pretty much every day I get a call from Eric looking for my boss and letting him know that I have to be honest with him because it's a recorded line. After being polite and 90 calls later, I answer the office phone. "Hello, this is Eric from Transworld. This is a recorded call. Is your boss there?" "Hi Eric, long time, my man. How's the dog?" "I don't have a dog. Is your boss there?" "No, Eric. Can I take a message?" "Well, do you have his cell phone number?" "Well, since you asked nicely, I do. Would you like it?" "Yes." "Okay, it is 1-800-244-2625. Fast forward 10 minutes, Eric calls back. "Is this Red Leaf?" "Yep." "That is real cute," directing me to a corn number. Mind I tell you that this is a recorded line. "Eric, if you're stupid enough to believe that a cell phone number starts with 1-800, then I think you have some other phone calls that you need to be making." I direct him to a different number every day and he calls. It's annoying and funny at the same time. Basically, this is pretty childish and immature, but screw it, I'm a grown man, and if some stupid debt collector wants to call and pester my company all day, then damn if I'm not going to have some fun while it lasts. Story 5. Almost the same story. I worked for a satellite company installing receivers, Dish Network, DirecTV. So I get to this house and an elderly guy answers. He shows me the house as it's a 4-room installation. The living room has a passed out girl on the couch in garments and a tank top. I'm stunned. He just says, "Don't mind her. My daughters like to drink. They're bartenders. Just work around them." I go to the next 2 rooms to find equally hot chicks in garments passed out. I felt like calling every dude I know just to scream what's happening. So I get the installation done and show the guy how to work the remote. He says, "Hang on, let me wake up my daughters. I'm not good with this techno crap." I thought the girls would be creeped out that I had been there the entire time. They were knocked out even though I was only 20 years old at the time. They didn't even put clothes on, so the entire tutorial I gave, it was amazing. Story 6. I wasn't actually at my job, but it was just after and across the street. I am 19 years old, I finished work, and I'm going to meet some friends after, so I change in the bathroom. I ran across the street to buy some drinks. This girl, who looked to be about 17 or 18, was with her mom, who was buying 15 plus bottles of wine. I got in line behind them, and as the girl was looking around, she noticed me. She was gorgeous, real cute, kind of a girl who just looked like a total sweetheart. So I'm standing in line with a case of beer and a 2-6 of vodka, and she notices me. I give her a smile, and she just seems to melt. I'm not tooting my own horn here. I just never get hit on or really noticed by girls unless they're intoxicated, so I was shocked. And she kept looking back at me and smiling. Her mom is still getting the 15 or so bottles of wine from the one cashier who insisted on getting one at a time. Her mom finally just goes with him to carry more. As soon as she's gone, I say something stupid, can't even remember exactly what. Having a party, probably, or something equally as intrusive. She giggles and says yes, asks if I'm doing the same, and I say yes. She takes the case of beer from my hand to inspect it and assures me it's a good beer, then hints to keep quiet to her mom about it. We introduce ourselves and keep talking about various drinks and stupid decisions we made. She's right next to me now. She awkwardly asks me if she gave me money, could I buy her a Mickey or something? I tell her I'll just get it for her because I'm a total sucker. After her mom comes back, she finishes paying and hauling all the wine out to her car. I couldn't see the parking lot, but I figured they were gone because I didn't think this girl was going to say, "Wait, that guy is buying me alcohol." I pay and head out, and she's sitting in my car. She says, "So, where are we going?" She notices I'm confused, so she says she told her mom she was meeting friends. I took her to hang out with my friends. She ended up staying the night at my house, then we hung out a whole bunch after that, then we just kinda drifted apart. Story 7. Librarian here. A guy came to my reference desk once asking if I could look up his mother's certificate. Apparently, he had been told for his entire life that his mother passed away while giving birth to him. He never believed it because he had a vague memory of being about 3 or 4 years old, coming into his mother's bedroom, and having his family member tell him to hug his mom and say goodbye. And the memory, she was very sick. Everyone in his entire family told him he was crazy for remembering that. So I do some research into the local records index and I find her certificate. It takes me like 5 minutes tops. I'll tell the guy, it looks like she passed away in May, 1945. He starts crying. He says, "I was born in 1941. This guy has been looked down upon and called crazy for his entire 70-year-old life. He shakes my hand and gives me some sort of Mexican blessing. He's a Hispanic male. Story 9. I am a bellman and a valet at a little boutique hotel. While working the PM shift, I was hanging out by the front desk, chatting with the front desk girls. Our lobby is fairly small and the restaurant is adjoining, so anyone in there has to walk past us to get to the washroom. The whole night, this smoking hot blonde with the biggest fake melons kept coming in and out of the lobby on her phone. I kept checking her out, but then she disappeared for a while. I then got a call to deliver 4 towels up to room 801. I headed up, rang the doorbell, and stood there for a bit. I heard some rustling and a little laughing, and then the door opened. The blonde was disrobed. Trying to keep my composure, I focused only on her face. She gave me a $5 tip, and I went back downstairs. 15 minutes later, I get another call, a request for 4 more towels. It was an odd request since only 2 people were allowed in the room. I headed back up and she opened the door again, but this time she was with 2 other girls who were also completely disrobed. I stood there with a huge smile on my face as they asked if I wanted to come in. Since the room was at the very end of the hall and a security camera was right there, I said, I can't. They kept begging, but stupidly I refused. They gave me another $5 and I headed back down. 5 minutes later, another call, 4 champagne flutes. I headed up and 4 girls, including the blonde, opened the door and told me to come in. I refused like a complete idiot and said I couldn't. They tried to negotiate, asking, what if we claimed the AC was broken? Can you come in then? I still refused and started walking back down the hall. One of the girls peeked her head out and kept trying to negotiate, even stepping out into the hall, right where the security camera got a shot of her. The next day, my manager asked me about it and then said, "Are you stupid? There are things in life you don't pass up," and that was one of them. Story 10. I perform psychiatric studies on Marines using an fMRI, a functional magnetic resonance imaging machine. Now, the setup is straightforward. They climb in wearing a breathing mask and a nose piece, lie as still as humanly possible, and play simplistic video games while we scan their brain activity. My absolute dream scenario, one I have yet to see, is a Marine getting into that machine and doing none of the following. Suddenly remembering he's claustrophobic only once he's inside the tube, realizing he has to urinate right this second, yelping in pain because he, quote, forgot to mention the surgical metal plate in his ankle, taking off his nose piece thinking I won't notice despite the CO2 monitor hooked up to his finger, forgetting that the left button means left and the right button means right, kicking at his blanket over and over because there's a wrinkle near my knee, simply falling asleep mid-study. I've been at this for a year now and I'm still waiting for that one perfect error-free scan. You'd think Marines would be the experts at following simple directions, right? Story 11. I was brought in late as a co-founder of a Silicon Valley startup in '98, which had been founded originally by a couple of engineers from India. I was a marketing MBA, but I knew Photoshop and HTML. We were about to run out of seed capital and were having serious issues with our development team in India launching our alpha version. One day, the CEO said, "We need somebody to go lead the team in India." Everyone just looked at me. I did one of those things where you look behind yourself to see who they must actually be talking about. A few days later, I was on a plane headed for Hyderabad with absolutely no plan and no idea what the hell I was doing. It turned out to be an amazing experience. We launched on time and used the alpha as a proof of concept to raise $20 million in VC funding before eventually flaming out in the dot-com bust. Story 12. I grew up in a major tourist trap. At night, I waited tables and the money was good, but sometimes you'd have the opportunity to pick up other work during the day. One of those jobs, which cropped up for a week every year, was caddying for the pro-am portion of a big local golf tournament. We're talking like 75, $100 for an hour of carrying clubs for rich dudes who pay to play with the pros. Very nice. So I get paired with this guy. Nice old dude, but a complete crappy golfer. However, he had a day just like the priest in the original Caddyshack. Every time he drove the ball into the woods, it would hit a tree and bounce right back onto the fairway. He had the time of his life, and at the end of the round, he tipped me $100, $200 total for an hour and a half. I was happy. But here's the kicker. He came into the restaurant where I worked for dinner that night. He was trying to convince his wife he'd had this epic golf game, but she wasn't buying it. Then, in I come. I backed him up on all of his stories, made them both laugh, kept the water glasses full, and didn't screw up the food. Usual, cool waiter things. As they were leaving, I started busting the table. He had left a $2 tip, and the top bill was a $5. I thought, well, no biggie. But the second bill was another $100. I flashed it at one of the other servers, and he almost dropped his food. Story 13. I used to work in the information department at an overseas U.S. embassy. They had a strict policy about destroying all hardware, storage drives, and pretty much anything with the capacity to retain information before disposal. What this translated into was me breaking CDs with my hands into a cardboard box. They did provide goggles. I should mention it was an interim position, so it was obviously delegated the witch work, but holy hell, shredding paper would have felt like a luxury compared to how much I loathed breaking those CDs. I would end the day covered in that plastic, glittery crap. It didn't have anything to do with actual confidentiality. If it was a CD or a disc, it had to be destroyed. We're talking everything from Paula Abdul records to AOL free trial discs. One day, my boss ushered me out to the back loading dock where 5 enormous laser printers were waiting alongside a sledgehammer. He just looked at me and told me to get to work. Friends, that was the day I truly learned the meaning of the word catharsis. Story 14. I was working as an audio tech in the Victory area for a major raceway, and the ceremony was taking place after dark. It was extremely cold, and the Umbrella Girls, models who wear nearly see-through, skin-tight, logoed gear, had the job of handing the winning drivers their trophies and huge champagne bottles. Traditionally, the drivers pop the corks and spray the girls before turning the spray on the audience. Because it was so cold, the girls were absolutely freezing. Those uniforms were basically mesh bodysuits, not exactly winter wear. They really didn't want to be soaking wet on top of being cold, so they asked me and another tech if there was anything we could do. We thought about it and told them, stand on the right side, hand the bottles to the guys when the music starts, then immediately duck back 10 feet. We'll take care of the rest. When the music hit, they handed over the trophies and the bottles. We fired off the fog machines. The girls disappeared into the fog like ninjas, and the drivers couldn't find their targets to douse them. We did this for every ceremony, about 6 in total, and the girls were thrilled. Cut to the next day. I was setting up the sound system for a band in the midday sun. My coworker and I were just working away when a pack of about 14 Umbrella Girls in all their skimpy glory appeared. They started whispering among themselves, and then one ran over to me. She said, "Hey, I just wanted you to know all the girls were so impressed with you last night. You're amazing. Thank you so much." The rest of the group was waving, and she blew a kiss before running off. My fellow tech turned to me, stunned, and asked what the hell had happened the night before. I just told him he'd missed a good night. The end result, half my coworkers thought I had group intimacy with the entire Umbrella Girl squad. I felt no need to correct them. And if you're enjoying the video too, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 15. I was working at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas for a company called Race for Atlantis, which was a 3D IMAX motion simulator ride. One morning, we delayed our opening for 2 hours because Michael Jackson reportedly wanted to take his kids on the ride. I'm a huge fan, but I was trying not to get my hopes up. Sure enough, within the hour, he showed up with his 2 kids and 2 bodyguards. I was stoked. The job had several stations that re-rotated every hour, and I happened to be manning the station where I explained the history of the Race for Atlantis to the audience. So, in he walks, 5 o'clock shadow, white t-shirt with a flowy overshirt, and wearing the most incredible cologne. Side note, I'm still looking for that scent. I didn't get a chance to ask what it was since we had to stay in character. Normally, I act out the skit for a room full of people, but this time it was just me in a toga performing a monologue about being from Atlantis for Michael Jackson. It was the most surreal moment of my life. Now, right in the middle of the skit, Michael interrupts me. My heart drops. I think, oh, damn, I effed something up, or that he hated my acting. But he just leaned in and asked, "Is Atlantis in the time before Christ?" In my head, I'm thinking, man, I'm just a college kid wearing a toga trying to make some money. I don't know. It must have shown on my face because my manager was standing behind him, frantically motioning for me to just make something up. I don't remember exactly what I told him, but it was soon time for him to move to the next station for the actual ride. As he walked by, he looked at me and said he really enjoyed his time. Having that experience with the person whose music I idolized was amazing, and I gave Michael Jackson a show. Story 16. One night while working as a bellman at a high-end resort in the Napa Valley, a very intoxicated, attractive blonde woman in her 30s stumbled back to her room after a night out. I was 19 at the time. I noticed she wasn't with the man she had checked in with. Not long after she got back, she rang room service for a burger and fries. Once the food was ready, I brought it down to her room. To my great surprise, she answered the door, totally disrobed, half-heartedly trying to cover herself behind the door. Wide-eyed, I set the food on a nearby table, awkwardly apologizing repeatedly. Before she closed the door, she asked if I could bring her as many condiments as we had. I gathered the items and brought them back. This time, unfortunately, she answered with a shirt on. But as I went to set the condiments next to the food, I noticed she had been blazing the crap out of her room. Naturally, I said, smells pretty good. And she responded with, oh yeah, want to smoke? Heck yes, I do. So we did, and although nothing happened intimately, I walked out of that room spiked as a kite with a tenner in my pocket and that lady's melons emblazoned in my mind. Story 17. I do service tech calls for Dell, IBM, Sony, Lenovo, Xerox, and pretty much anything else with a processor. Generally, I'm at a place of business, but occasionally I get house calls. One of those house calls started with me calling the customer to confirm the appointment. A haggard-sounding old lady answered and informed me that her daughter would be there. Fair enough. When I arrived, the daughter turned out to be a gorgeous brunette, no older than 20. Since I'm 23, it wasn't some creepy old dude situation. She was dressed like a typical 20-year-old, wearing very short shorts and a thin tank top. She made it a point to flaunt herself every chance she got. I probably could have had my way with her, and I wonder sometimes why I didn't. That was easily the best thing to happen on a call in 2 years. That or the rare occasion when Dell actually sends parts that freaking work. There is nothing worse than rebuilding a server, laptop, or desktop only to find that the replacement parts are useless on arrival. Story 18. I was delivering pizza, like most of these stories, at 1 in the morning because the place I worked was open late for the intoxicated and spiked crowd. Sure enough, I ended up taking a delivery to a group of intoxicated guys in an apartment. Usually these guys are a pain to deal with, and this group started out the same way. Intoxicated number 1 answers the door, signs his credit receipt, and hands it back. As he takes the pizzas from me, he asks, "Can I tip you in beer?" I politely declined, joking that my job doesn't really lend itself well to drinking on the clock. He laughed, and then intoxicated number 2 stepped up and stuffed a wad, and I mean a wad, of ones into my hand. It looked like 7 or 8 bills all crumpled together. I thanked him and got out of there because those guys were wasting my delivery time. When I got back to the store and pulled out the wad of bills to straighten them out, I found 7 ones and 2 20s. Story 19. I was in college working at the computer center. In the campus apartments, we had these locked wiring cabinets that fed network connections throughout the units. We would get tickets from students complaining about the connection, and we'd have to go track down the issue. Most of the time, their computer was just full of crapware and viruses, but sometimes it was a dead port on a switch. One day, I went to go check on a switch. I knocked on the apartment door, rang the bell, knocked some more, and rang the bell again, but nobody answered. I let myself in, announcing myself loudly the whole way. All the lights were off, and since it was the middle of the day, I figured everyone was in class. I had done this countless times before. I went into the hall where the wiring cabinet was, unlocked the cover, and started my job. While it wasn't particularly loud work, I wasn't exactly trying to be quiet either. I almost finished and was about to put the cover back on when a girl came out of her room complaining about the noise. I turned to look at her. She was disrobed, she screamed and ran back into her room, and I almost dropped the cabinet cover. I finished locking up and then stood outside her door and explained exactly who the hell I was and what I was doing there. She shouted back that she was going to call campus security. Since my job was done, I left. Later, my boss and I talked about the situation. Because of me, male workers are no longer allowed in female apartments, even though I followed protocol and announced myself. On the upside, she was pretty hot. I saw her a few weeks later at the computer center. She spotted me and quickly ran out. I honestly feel like I traumatized her. I also found out later that she was a lesbian. Story 20. I worked armed security at an off-campus garden apartment complex belonging to a women's college. I was only about 5 years older than the students. The school had a specific policy. They wanted us to ring the apartments whenever we found a lobby door left open, forcing the girls to come down and lock it themselves. There were approximately 4 apartments per lobby door. Yes, they wanted us to be annoying. The girls understandably hated coming out of their apartments just to lock a door, but they also appreciated having us around. We did a good job keeping them safe and never bothered them unless they called us for something like an unwanted date or a security concern. One evening, I rang for an open door and a girl came downstairs drying her hair with a towel and wearing absolutely nothing else. She just stood there smiling as I went stumbling backward off her steps in shock. Eventually, the security contractor tried to move me to another college, and that school liked me so much that they actually threw the contractor out when he tried to pull me off the site. It ended with the 2 colleges fighting over my services. Story 21. It was my first day as an official RA during undergrad. I was sitting at the front door of the clubhouse at an off-campus housing project handing out move-in packets. Every time a student told me they were in my building, 48 people in total, I properly introduced myself as their RA. I introduced myself to one girl who gave the usual "hi, nice to meet you," and moved on to the next tables to get her parking pass and keys. One of her parents stuck around and asked, "So you're going to be my daughter's RA, huh?" I told him yes, I was. He looked at me and said, "Okay, well, make sure you protect her. I mean it. Take care of that girl." I have to admit, I was nervous. I was only 19 and quite literally in charge of the safety of a bunch of little freshies. That night, that same freshman showed up at a neighbor's party. I gave her my number, not trying to be that guy, but trying to be a good RA. I told her, "If your alarm goes off, call me." We had panic buttons in the rooms. Their primary function, in practice, seemed to be getting pressed by unwitting students, leading to mass underage drinking arrests for the entire building. I went home from the party to relax with my roommates and started getting random texts. It was a girl. She wanted me to come over. I tried to blow her off at first. After all, I was the RA and thought I should maintain some professional respect. But she was downright begging. That night, I learned the fringe benefits of being an RA. Every year after that, the first week of school was like shooting fish in a barrel. I still did my job as a professional. I was a social work major and handled every student issue like a boss, including the bleachy milk girls, because I found it to be great real-world training. I will never forget, however, the first week of every fall. Story 22. My workplace is semi-government. I have my own office, my coworkers are nice, and my interns are good-looking. On the occasions when I actually have to do work, it's work I love. My boss and clients appreciate my efforts, and I always manage to get things done on time. My computer screen faces the wall and no one ever checks our files or browser history. I have literally spent entire weeks here playing Donkey Kong Country. So I get to write and speak the language I majored in all day long. There is always chocolate in the cupboard. I travel a few times a year, staying at high-end hotels and eating incredible free food. The office is located right next to the city's central station. If I want to go shopping after work, I can walk right into the town center. If I want to visit my parents, I hop on a train and get there before dinner is even on the table. I am frequently invited to fancy dinners and parties where I meet high-level government officials and drink expensive wine. If there is money left over in the budget at the end of the year, we receive a portion of it in tax-free cash. I'm 25 and this is my first real job. Story 23. I used to work in a small mom-and-pop computer repair shop. One day, a customer brought in his machine for repair. After inspecting it, I realized I had almost certainly taken a direct lightning hit. Damn near every component in the computer was fried. Some parts even had visible burn marks leading straight to the ground. I called the customer and gave him the bad news. The machine was a total loss. I told him he'd have to file it as a claim on his homeowner's insurance. The guy immediately lost it. He gets furious, screaming and carrying on about how computers are designed to take lightning strikes and that we were obviously incompetent. Typical stupid customer behavior. I packed his computer back up, put it on the out shelf, and assumed that was the end of it. 3 days later, one of the other techs handed me an envelope with my name on it. I opened it and found a note that said something along the lines of, "Sorry, I was a schmuck. I was out of line and the damage wasn't your fault. I hope this makes up for it. Thanks for your help." Inside was a crisp $100 bill. Story 24. I work as an IT technician in a high school. Normally, we only see kids when they need a password reset or have a message for us from a teacher. One day, a 15 or 16-year-old student walked in and came straight over to my desk. It turns out he didn't need to know why something wouldn't print or why he couldn't log on. He had made a flash game and wanted help with a bit of action script. We sat there for an hour eating chocolate while I taught him some AS basics and showed him a few more complex tricks in Flash. Afterward, he went back to class and ended up getting a 100% on his project. He still keeps me updated on his latest work. To people who don't work in education, this might not seem like a big deal. But to have a kid who was not only genuinely interested in coding and animation, but also treats school staff with actual respect, that is truly amazing. Also, on a purely technical note, installing Windows on a PC and not having to hunt down a single additional driver is far more satisfying than it has any right to be. Story 25. When I was working for the Postal Service, one of my tasks was emptying the drive-up blue mailboxes behind the office. One day, during one of those rare winter to spring transitions where the temperature jumps from 45 to 65 degrees, a hot, middle-aged woman, maybe 35 or 40, pulled up in her Lexus convertible. She stopped at the box, but her letters were tucked away in her bag in the back seat. She couldn't reach them from the driver's seat, so she swung her door open. She was wearing a skirt, and as she pivoted her leg out of the car, the skirt went flying up. I got a perfect, unobstructed view. It made my entire week. Usually the excitement at those boxes consists of old ladies taking 20 minutes just to remember where they put their letters. Story 26. I used to work as a janitor during my college breaks. In the summer before I started school, I was working in an office building in New York, 909 3rd Avenue specifically. Part of my job was delivering intra-building mail, things like cleaning bills and invoices. So I got to one particular floor to deliver mail to a small company and found a rather pretty tall, thin receptionist sitting at the desk. I gave her the mail and, using my apparently superb high school flirting skills, traded a few quick words with her. I was about to leave, but my mind was stuck on how much I wanted to be with her. On a whim, I decided to throw this line at her. Is there anything else I can do? She gave me what I now recognize as the look. She led me into an empty office, shut the door. Probably about 10 seconds later, I officially received my first ever whistle. She just smiled, wiped her mouth, and left. I still don't know her name, but if you're reading this, is there anything else I can do? Story 27. Last summer, I was waiting tables at a fancy restaurant. It was a pretty slow night, a Monday, if I remember correctly. In walks in a big fat man and his big fat wife. They were both obnoxious, and I was sure I was in for a crappy time. Normally, after a table walks in, I come over and show them the wine menu, tell them the specials and whatnot. This man glances at the wine list and immediately orders a bottle of 12-year-old Dom Perignon champagne, a $300 bottle. Stunned, I got him his wine. Not 10 seconds after I uncork his champagne, he orders another bottle of $220 French wine. They proceeded to order 3 enormous courses, get extremely intoxicated, and stumble home, leaving me with almost half full bottles of fancy wine and about a $100 tip. Story 28. This was somewhat job-related as I was traveling for a conference in Las Vegas. I stayed for 2 nights, and on the second night, we finally had some time to go out and party. I don't gamble much, but I decided to hit the slots with some friends from work. I put $100 into a $1 machine. On the third spin, I won $1,200. Needless to say, drinks were on me that night. The next morning at McCarran Airport, still riding the spike from the night before, I decided to play some quarter machines while drinking my coffee. I put in $10. After just a few spins, the machine lit up. I won another $700, $800. It was an awesome feeling, gambling really for the first time and actually winning. But here is the kicker, and I'm not even making this up. The very next week, I had to travel to Spokane, Washington, of all places. We went to an Indian casino near the airport for drinks since it was close to the hotel, and Spokane's weekday nightlife is pretty quiet. I decided to play the slots again. In less than 10 minutes, I won another $1,000. Story 29. I work at an upscale grocery store that rents out a sushi booth to a middle-aged Asian couple. They are the cutest pair, both really short, always smiling, and constantly joking around. I work in the produce department, and we sell them ingredients like cucumbers and red leaf lettuce at cost. The other day, they came to get some supplies. The woman does most of the talking because the man doesn't speak much English. After I handed them their supplies, the woman looked at me and said, "Thank you, handsome." The man immediately asked me, "What is handsome?" Not wanting to get into a long explanation, I just told him it meant being nice. He smiled, nodded, and went on his way. About an hour later, I was standing by the trash compactor when he came around the corner with a cart full of boxes. A vendor, a big muscular guy, was working in the aisle, blocking his path. The sushi man called out, "Excuse me," and the vendor moved out of the way. As the sushi man walked by, he looked up at this huge guy and said, "Thank you, handsome." I almost passed away laughing. I felt like I had won the Lost in Translation lottery. Story 30. In the mid-90s, I was working as a newspaper reporter doing a story on the national pilot shortage. I went to interview the manager of a small local airport, and as I stood up to leave, he asked, "Where are you going? We need to get you up there." And before I knew it, he, his co-pilot girlfriend, and I were thousands of feet in the air in a single-prop fixed-wing plane. We were cruising directly above the Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods casinos when he suddenly leaned back, put his hands behind his head, and nodded toward the co-pilot's wheel. "I can't fly," I yelled over the engine noise. "You better learn," he yelled back. So there I was, a reporter with 0 flight hours, piloting a plane over the Connecticut skyline. He gave me a little crash course on the fly, shouting instructions about making small adjustments and keeping an eye on the artificial horizon. Eventually, he told me to head back toward the airport. As we lined up with the landing strip, I looked over at him, waiting for him to take over. "Well?" I asked. "Well, what? I'll adjust the altitude and pitch. Just make sure you push down hard when I say to." I was too stunned to argue. We got lined up, he set and locked the pitch wheel, and we started our descent. When we were just a few feet off the ground, he yelled, "Now!" I pushed down. "No," he screamed, "push down hard." I leaned my entire weight onto the wheel, and we hit the tarmac with a surprisingly soft thump. It was, without a doubt, the best and most terrifying assignment I have ever had. Story 31. I work in IT, and as a, quote, young dude with a fairly verbose level of teenage colloquialism, I'm often the odd one out. Most of my teammates are much older and significantly less versed in my slang or cultural references. One fine day, I was setting up a corporate cell phone for an end user, which required contacting Verizon for activation. As fate would have it, the business care representative on the other end was also quite the dude himself. For one shining moment, we descended into a complete bro-to-bro conversation, speaking a language entirely our own. The poor lady in the middle, the VIP whose phone we were actually setting up, just sat there in complete awe. You could see her trying to process how we young little bastards were the ones in charge of her high-level corporate account. To her credit, she wasn't a bad customer, but it was hilarious to gauge her reaction to our banter. In an environment where I usually feel out of place while angry VIPs scream about nonsense, it was incredibly satisfying to finally be on the inside of the joke. Story 32. I used to work as a salesman selling phone and broadband services in the middle of shopping malls. Yes, I was one of those guys who try to stop and sell you something you didn't ask for. For 5 days a week, I'd be at a different center. Once I hit about 30 different locations, the rotation would start all over again. So one day, I picked up a girl working at one of the stalls. We started syncing our breaks so we could spend time together, which usually involved messing around in the dark corners of the parking garage. Then I had a bright idea. Why not do this at every stop on my route? I began picking up a different girl at every single shopping center. Every day I went to work, I was with someone new. I was having an absolute ball. My contact list looked like a travel itinerary. Angela, Brighton, Bianca, Shepperton, Casey, Richmond. Unfortunately, my extracurricular activities started to wreck my productivity. Since it was a 100% commission-based job, my bank account eventually hit zero. I couldn't afford to keep the job anymore and had to quit. I've had plenty of experiences since then, but I don't think I've had half as much fun as I did during those 6 months on the road. And if any of these stories got to you too, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.